Hello guys, my name is SVB and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I hope will really help a lot of you guys improve in the long run. A complaint I receive often is that there's a lot of people out there who know how to play Overwatch, but they struggle to watch games of Overwatch and actually figure out what's happening. Whether this is Overwatch League or some random game or someone looking to watch back one of their own replays. As I said in my previous video, I'd like to be able to help you guys get to a stage where you feel comfortable reviewing your own gameplay. But to do that, we first need to understand what's actually going on in the first place. So in this video, I'm going to talk you guys through how you go about understanding a game of Overwatch. I think if more people feel comfortable understanding what they're seeing on screen, it will make it a lot easier to actually apply any knowledge gained to their own games. And hopefully, some of what I'm talking about will also help people get better perspective on what's going on during their game. So, if at any point in the video, you learn something new, or you enjoy what you see, please do make sure to like and subscribe to my content so that you can keep up to date and I can know to keep making more videos like this. So, let's get to it guys. So before we get into talking about fights and figuring out what's going on in the heat of a chaotic Overwatch battle, first we need to look at the larger picture. Overwatch is as much about what happened before the fight as it is about what happened during. So first, let's talk through the more external elements of an Overwatch game. The first thing that you should bear in mind when you're looking at an Overwatch game is the map. The map will define so much about what gets played and how you play it. So even when you're queuing for a game, as soon as the map is locked in, you can start planning and understanding a lot. Specifically, you want to look at two things, the map mode and the map geography. Both these things are important because they will usually define what kind of heroes get played. In terms of modes, here's a quick rundown of what each mode will usually entail. And I mean usually because there are many maps that defy these broad categories. Firstly, we have the dreaded Assault type, or 2CP as the community refers to it. 2CP maps can be very frustrating because they can be sometimes incredibly difficult to break through, and at other times, teams can be very prone to being steamrolled. Primary reason for this is that 2CP maps usually favor defenders very heavily, and if defenders get set up properly, then attackers often need to come up with a good plan of attack or coordinate their ults well to break through. However, if defenders set up poorly or they get broken, then you can end up losing a point in just one fight and essentially a matter of seconds. So this is something to bear in mind. Next, we have payload maps, also known as escort. Escort maps are much more of a long haul because you can often need 2 and sometimes even 3 fights minimum before the attacker can actually push the cart from one point to the next. That means games are less determined by singular fights and more by the overarching playstyles. This is a contrast to 2CP, and though ultimate combos are always strong, they're not as strong in escort because they won't single-handedly win you round. And the fact that the objective is moving means that the defenders can't be as immobile, whereas attackers can. The next mode is hybrid, which incorporates elements of both of the above. The first point is defender favored and allows for stubborn setups, but then we kick into a payload setup where it takes many fights to push from B to C and C till the end. Finally, we have control points, aka King of the Hill. Because both teams are attacking and defending, and there's no inherent geographical advantage for either side, these games often turn into much more of a deathmatch, at least in ranked play. As a consequence, these games often favor solo queue playstyles a lot more and usually allow for more niche picks. So those are the 4 map types, and that's a very brief glance at how they can affect games. But I don't want you to dwell on that too long, as there's a lot to cover. The next thing, and probably the more important thing, is map geography. It's incredibly important to Overwatch to understand how each map and how each area of a map affects hero choices, positioning, and fight dynamics. I will talk you through a full example later in the video so that you guys can see practical workings of this and everything else I'm going to talk about. But generally, just bear a few things in mind. 1. Is there a lot of high ground and low ground? If so, contesting the high ground as the attacker will be hugely important, and keeping it as a defender will be the same. Secondly, are there a lot of narrow choke points? If yes, these are where fights are likely to take place, and team compositions will have to deal with this issue. Finally, are there a lot of long sightlines for snipers? Or is there good airspace for a Fire Mercy? Again, this will affect who you come out of spawn with and what kind of threats you have to be on the lookout for. Okay, so that's the meta stuff out the way, and hopefully you haven't switched off yet out of boredom. Now, we get into the game, and this is where the tactics begin to form and come into play. Obviously, the first thing that anyone should look at the start of an Overwatch game is team compositions. Now, I made a video not too long ago on which comps counter what, and how different comps interact with one another. And while that's all been changed by the impending arrival of 222 locks, the rough principles still apply. I won't go into exact detail here because then this video would end up being an hour long, But while players are still in the spawn room, it's important to think about how compositions interact. If you're watching someone else's game, think about why both sides have picked the heroes they have, remembering the things that we've discussed about the maps just previously. Are they picking shield heavy comps to set up a stubborn high ground defense? Are they selecting fast comps to bypass chokes? Are they selecting lots of snipers because of long sightlines? Try to ask yourself questions and then propose potential answers. If it's your own game, then you should be thinking about your hero choice and how it interacts with not only what your teammates have picked, but also what you think is likely to be coming your way. Finally, after this, the spawn doors open and the game begins. At this point, there's one thing that you should make sure you clearly understand about both teams. What is the win condition? This is one of the most important concepts in Overwatch, and yet one of the most neglected. Immediately, when you look at the lineups of two teams, you should be asking yourself, how is each team most likely to win this game? For example, defenders generally just want to stop attackers from capturing the objective. So their win condition is usually something along the lines of set up a stubborn defense and deny the attacker's space. They might, as a consequence, try to exploit choke points, they might try to abuse high ground, or they might just try and create a comp which is very difficult to break down. And that's where win conditions become particularly important for attackers to bear in mind. Essentially, a win condition is either a game plan or a set of moves that, when executed, is what a team will rely on to win them fights. An example of this is picking both Ana and Genji. If you have those two on a team, the win condition is probably to execute a Nanoblade. Nanoblades are incredibly difficult to stop when executed well, as they can cut through almost anything the other team has, and it can almost guarantee you a few kills, which is always enough to win a fight. Similarly, a Graviton Surge comboed with a Hanzo ultimate is also a combo which is very hard to counter, so that could be considered another win condition. But of course, these aren't just limited to ultimates. You might have a Widowmaker in one team who's really good, and so the win condition might become, well, let's make sure she has enough space to get kills by keeping the enemy occupied. If we give her space, she will get picks. Alternatively, your win condition can be tactical, such as setting up a surprise Bastion somewhere on a flank, or teleporting your team to an unexpected location with Symmetra with the express purpose of catching the defenders off guard. Your win condition could even be to shut down the enemy's win condition, which is particularly true for defenders. If the enemy is running a Pharah Mercy combo that is doing a lot of work, your win condition might just become to shut them down and kill them early, leaving the enemy team with nothing left that could hurt you. Quite often, you will see a direct correlation between which team is winning and which team is executing their win conditions properly. Once we get past this, we get into the action. Fights are easily the most chaotic part of Overwatch, not least because the things that make it so beautiful, the detailed visuals, unique aesthetics, and colorful abilities, are also what make the game a visual mess and hard to follow. That's why I've tried to spend a lot of time explaining the things that happen before a fight so that you can be armed with as much knowledge as possible when you actually come down to the nitty-gritty. So, besides that, here's a few key things that you should focus on if you find yourself unable to come to terms with the chaos of an Overwatch fight. The most important of these is probably the kill feed. The kill feed, most of the time, will tell you the story of a fight, who's winning, who's losing, and also who's contributing to the fights. Of course, final blows can sometimes be deceiving, but if you see a name crop up frequently, or if you see one person suddenly appear on the kill feed with 3 or 4 contributions, then you know that that person is doing a lot for their team. Also, make sure you keep an eye on the assists, because just like the final blows column, someone who's appearing in a lot of assists is probably really pulling their team up, and that should give you a hint to watch that person in the next fight because they're proving to be a decisive factor. Or if you're spectating, you might want to focus more on this person to understand how it is that they're able to have such a big impact. When you are spectating, you also have the luxury of seeing the two teams' status bar, and these can be very helpful to keep an eye on, particularly if you ever get lost with what's happening on the rest of the screen. Obviously, the health parts of these are important, but you can also see status effects such as purples, freezes, hacks, stuns. The most important thing though, in terms of assessing the game and understanding the overall narrative of who might win this game and why, is the ultimate bank. As I mentioned before, ultimates are often a very frequent way of generating win conditions in Overwatch, and in general, they are super powerful, and ult usage often defines rounds and matches. A really important aspect of Overwatch is ultimate economy, i.e. cycling which ultimates you use, and ideally, using as few of them as you can to win each fight at a time. It's always worth keeping an eye on which team has ultimates in the bank. Usually, the team with more ultimates will win. However, at the end of the day, it really comes down to execution. Sometimes, Teams will have 6 ultimates and still lose a fight, and that's when you know that something went wrong with how they use those ultimates. Similarly, a team may not have a lot of ultimates or none at all and still win a fight, and that lets you know that they executed the fight in a really crisp and clean manner, and they must have done something tactically that led to their success. Now, this is all a lot to take in at once, obviously. This checklist is not something that you can necessarily instantly integrate into your mind, but feel free to come back to this video and look at these points as you try to incorporate more elements into your knowledge bank. But now, importantly, to show you how these things play out in an actual physical game, I'm going to talk you through an Overwatch League match from the last weekend and touch on each of these points briefly. So here we have the Washington Justice, who managed to pull off a surprise upset win against the Vancouver Titans. It all starts with this map 1 in Ilios, so let's take a look at some key fights and how we can go about understanding what went on. So as I mentioned, while we're waiting for the spawn doors to open, it's a good chance to try and analyze the more meta aspects of the game. In this case, let's talk about the map first. Because this is a control point, we know both teams can get to the same spot at exactly the same time, provided they're running the same composition. Also, note that with Ilios Lighthouse, there's a few things that you will see crop up fairly frequently. One is you might see a lot of Pharah usage, because there's a lot of good airspace to Pharah to fly around, particularly around this namesake lighthouse. Secondly, note that the point itself is actually under great cover. The interior of this lighthouse provides lots of great spots for you to hide, lots of great cover, and teams can really exploit this to become hard to push off once they capture control. These two things are going to become very, very important in a second. But first, let's quickly talk team compositions. So we can see here, the tank line is the same, and for the time being, this Lucio pick is also the same. So let's look at these other differences. Firstly, we have Ana for the Titans versus Moira for the Justice. Now what does Ana provide? Ana provides a lot more long range with her healing. So you can particularly exploit long sightline areas, and you can also contribute to healing your Pharah, who'll be high up in the sky. Of course, there's also the potential for big anti-nades, but we'll talk about that and particularly why they're not super successful in this matchup in a minute. Moira, on the other hand, is obviously going to provide a lot more healing in a narrow area. And remember, we mentioned that this lighthouse area is very narrow, is very choky, and can be a good place for teams to hide out. So this is one key difference already. What we're actually going to see as well in a second is that once the game starts, Slime is actually going to switch over to Mercy. He's only on Lucio to provide the initial speed boost coming out of spawn, whereas Arc is going to stay on Lucio for the entirety of this game. Again, this will come to mind later, but I just want to flag these things up because these are the kind of things you guys should be speculating about before a game starts. Finally, we have the DPS lineup, and particularly for the Titans, their DPS lineup is very interesting. It's not one you see particularly often, and we can see it's a very burst-centric lineup. Neither of these heroes could really be relied on to consistently chip away at enemies the way that, for example, a Reaper can when he's in range. Instead, it's likely that the Titans will have to wait for Haksal or Hureg to either land significant amounts of damage or just straight out get a kill before they're actually able to push forward and engage. By contrast, the Justice have got two heroes who, when in a confined area, are incredibly dangerous and will very quickly take someone out. Reaper, of course, is self-explanatory with his shotguns, and we all know from experience how quickly a Reaper in your face will melt you. Mei, on the other hand, is not only great for zone control, but if you do get in range of her left click, there's very few heroes who can survive being frozen, particularly at the pro level, where they will focus someone who's frozen down very quickly. So already before the game starts, we can actually see a lot about the teams just from what they've picked and just from a little bit of understanding of the map. We can clearly see that the Justice have picked a very short range comp, and they all want to be within a confined area of each other. Perfect for controlling this little map. The Titans, on the other hand, have gone for a little bit more of a long range, burst damage, pick potential type of comp, and that can be comparatively more risky, because if you don't get these picks, you'll actually really struggle. We're going to see evidence of that as the game starts. So we're actually going to see this play out as the spawn doors open. You can see the Justice are going to stick on their comp, while the Titans have now switched over to this Mercy I mentioned. As a consequence, you can see how much more quickly the Justice actually end up getting on point. On top of that, we know that this is actually their game plan. While the Titans are trying to set up both Hureg and Haksal in potentially dangerous positions, and maybe even anticipating that the fight might take place in this room, where they often do, they're more focused on claiming this high ground. The Justice, meanwhile, completely ignore this and run themselves straight on to point. So already, within about 10 seconds of the game beginning, we can already see tactical differences play out in the teams and how they execute their game plans. So as we resume now, we'll see the Justice start to get set up, and now their purpose is just to turtle up. So we can see now from Haksal, he's trying to go from this right hand side, and all he's trying to do is land a few rockets that might result in a bit of burst damage. But actually, another key interaction that just took place there is that Bumper tries to halt the members of the Justice into a more exploitable position, and Stratus puts this Mei wall up, blocking this doorway from any sidelines, and you can see that kind of zones Hureg out a little bit, as well as Janu. And if I take that back just a couple seconds, you'll see this happen more clearly. So once again, Bumper goes for this halt, the wall denies any follow-up, and now the point opens up, the Washington Justice get the first flip, and despite a huge anti-nade coming in from Twilight, the Justice are actually going to be fine. They're going to turtle up. Corey goes and gets a kill on Hureg, and you can see again how tight they're trying to play. Notice this shield from Giannis. Although he dies immediately after placing it, Giannis has now created a little barrier for his teammates to hide behind, and it perfectly encapsulates the mentality that his team is playing with. They're not interested in dominating fights, they're not interested in taking flashy one-on-ones. They're just going to sit on point, they're just going to turtle up, and they're just going to survive. And they're going to let their main, their Reaper, wreak havoc in this small room. To get this kill, Bumper goes really deep, and as a consequence, he's now going to die. So you can see, again, doesn't really matter what the Titans are trying, as long as the Justice have people like Mei and Reaper on point, there's really nothing you can do. Again, a nice deny there from Stratus. If we go back and see it again, Hureg tries to punch through, in comes Stratus' wall. So you can see again, they're using the Mei almost as a third tank. They're using her to try and block off angles. If it's not this door, it's this door, it's this door, and anyone who comes in is now within her effective range. They can start getting left clicked, and they can start getting focused down. So this is the Justice adapting to the loss of the Ghost meta by just playing Mei as effectively a third tank. And like I said, the Lucio's alive to heal them all in this room. The Mei is still alive, she can freeze this Doomfist even though he goes and gets a kill on this baby Diva. And now the Mei wall, now the Mei Blizzard and the wall will zone enough people out that this first fight win goes fairly comfortably for the Washington Justice. So again, now you can see how much the Titans are struggling to actually get a foothold on this point. They know they can't contest this Mei and this Reaper, so they know they have to wait for one of their DPS to do some burst damage. From the larger angle, we can see Hureg and Haksal. They're both looking for flanks, they're both trying to look for some angle, they're both trying to find some way of getting a pick. But while they're doing all this, of course this point meter keeps ticking. So once again, playing to the win condition, playing to the map geography. And now in a second, we're going to see ultimates start to come online and make a difference. So the first thing that happens is that Bumper drops a supercharger to try and give his team more of an angle to come in, do damage, maybe get a pick. However, in response, Guido drops his Coalescence, and he's trying in turn to zone out the Titans, because they're all lined up nicely for his Coalescence to do maximum damage. Now Hureg punches in, he doesn't land a kill, he punches out, and it forces a Valkyrie from Slime. But you can see again here, Slime is quite zoned out. He can't really get a great angle, he's trying to boost his team, but because they're at these awkward angles, he can only either choose to boost Haksal or the rest of his team. Thankfully for him, Haksal does go and get a kill over on Corey, and you can see again Giannis has been anti-naded. So the kill feed is giving us an indication that maybe the Titans can start to break through. Same for the status bar. But of course, there's one important thing for us to interpret, this ultimate bank here. Notice that the Titans have just popped 3 ultimates, and almost all of them are going to end in a second. This gives us an indication as to why they were able to get this one kill. We just saw from that last clip, Haksal is not only being damage boosted, but he's also being supercharge boosted. So of course, he goes and gets a kill on Corey, because he's essentially had 2 ultimates invested into just that one kill. Hureg, of course, because of his low HP, is forced to pop Meteor Strike. But remember what I mentioned earlier, about how even having a bigger ultimate bank isn't a guaranteed win if you execute it poorly. And although Giannis is in trouble, now the big power play ultimate of the Washington Justice is going to come into play in a second. Haksal, you're going to see, is actually flanking around the corner, and he just wants to drop his barrage. We can see at the top here, he's got it, and we can see his intentions quite clearly. He's desperate to sneak in, drop this barrage and win this fight, but the sound barrier from Arc denies him that opportunity. So as we let the play go on, you can see he's forced to run away, and he comes from this left hand angle now to try and surprise the Justice. In the meantime though, Giannis has popped his supercharger and he's gone and killed Hureg. So that's already a big loss for the Titans. who, like I said, are now popping their 4th ultimate, and yet have so far only gotten 1 kill. And we're going to see, from Haksaal's perspective, this barrage is going to get a whole lot of nothing done. You can see the Justice do what they've been doing all map. They play the angles, they drop a Mei wall in his face, and that denies him any chance of getting any kills. And now as the fight plays out, you can see Stratus' power of being Mei on this point. He freezes Jianu easily. Arc and Guido are still alive healing people, so these 5 characters of point are so nice and healthy. Meanwhile now, the Titans have run out of impetus. Their Diva's half HP, their Ana's half HP, and they've got no more ultimates really left, other than the self-destruct. So what we can take away so far is that the Washington Justice are executing their win condition much better than the Titans. Now if we look at the point percentage, we can see they're almost in 1-5 territory. The Titans pretty much have to win this fight, and yet once again, they're at a severe ult disadvantage. 3 big ultimates are about to come online for the Justice. So really, if they are to win this next fight, they're going to have to make some sort of big play, and it will come in the form of Jianu. So Hureg is going to go and get a kill on Janus, but 2 kills are going to go down. And this key play out now is what's essentially going to save the Titans. Corey tries to pop a Death Blossom right in Hureg's face, but who's there to protect him? Well, it's Jianu. And now we're going to watch from his perspective as he actually goes, kills Corey, and knocks Sansum off the map. And now the Blizzard is unfortunately poorly placed from Stratus. As we can see here, doesn't actually affect much of the point. There's a little gap here that Jianu can use, but he's able to stay alive. He gets frozen, but he's just all here to just try and touch point. Nana Boost goes down on Haksaal, so now they've stalled it out long enough thanks to Jianu's work to get 1 ultimate online. You can see this rocket has Stratus' name on it. Yep, you're dead, buddy. I think that's a bit of satisfaction there for anyone who's ever been frozen by Mei. But you can see here now with the nano boosted Haksaal, he's just too scary, he's just doing too much damage. Jianu's back, and Haksaal's able to zone out and kill the last few members of the Justice. Finally at 99%, with Twilight crouching for his life, the Titans are going to go and get the flip. But there is something key and interesting to note here, is that in his desperate attempt to get back on the point, knowing that there was only 1 fight left, Bumper has now gone and switched over to the Wrecking Ball. Now, remember what I said, what the Justice were doing really well was sitting on point with the Orisa, using her shield, and then using the Mei wall, when her shield was down, to just turtle up on point and make themselves really hard to dislodge. But of course, because of this switch, the Titans now have no shield, no main protection for themselves, and they're going to be in a little bit of trouble as we see in the next fight play out. So Stratus is actually able to go and get a kill on Haksaal, 2 icicles to the face, and while the Titans are busy rezzing this up, you see the Justice are coming up to take the high ground off them, so that they can eventually get back on point like they want to. Although Janus had made the switch over to the Wrecking Ball when it was in an overtime situation, because his team has so much control, he has the luxury of being able to go over and switch back onto the Orisa. So once again, remember, game plan, team composition, map geography. These are the things that are helping us understand why the Justice are making the decisions they are. As soon as they get the high ground back, they drop, and they're going to go straight for point, bully the Titans out the picture, and they're starting to accrue up points again. Jianu desperately drops self-destruct in, but it doesn't really connect. And again, Bumper, he can't stay on point for long, and what happened there was a huge play, which we will rewind in a second. Watch Arc's perspective as Bumper rolls in front of him. There goes a little boop, and Bumper is now off the map. And again, this is a story that the kill feed will tell us. And with Arc Soundberry once again ready, that big power play ult, only a barrage remains for the Titans, and that is just not going to be enough to see them win this fight. Jianu desperately touches, barrage goes down, but there it is, the Soundberry comes through, kill comes through, a desperate nano boost on Jianu, but with the Mei around, how are you supposed to contest this point? He gets frozen, he gets focused, 6 members of the Justice all on the point, all once again executing their win condition, and by the time Bumper even gets back, once again he's just getting focused, too much damage, too much sustain here, Blizzard to confirm, and the Justice get that point win. So map 1 successfully goes to the Washington Justice. And you can see they've made no compositional switches, despite the fact that this map is a little bit different. They still want to execute roughly the same strategy, which is to get on point, turtle up, and be hard to dislodge. However, because of the long sidelines of Ilios Ruins, Hureg decides to make a switch over to the Widowmaker, Haksaal goes over to the Mei, probably to counter Stratus' Mei, and Jianu is actually now on the Hog. So he's trying to execute the Halt Hook combo. In theory, this is a good idea, because the Halt Hook combo is a very good win condition. When successfully executed, you can pretty much guarantee 1 kill every time you do it. But what you're going to see here is that the Justice's comp is actually very good at countering this Halt Hook combo. The Titans posture initially, but now the Justice push forward. They use the defense matrix, and here we go. Here's where the differences start to manifest. The Justice use their wall just to get close enough, and they zone out most of the Titans. Haksal isn't really ready, and as Janus pushes forward, now it's too dangerous for the Titans to come through. Why? Because of Corey. This Reaper here, crouching as he reloads, is just too much of a threat. You can't get in his effective distance, and the Titans aren't playing their game. Their win condition, remember, is this Widowmaker. Hureg is not going to head over to this high ground to try and get picks, and all the Titans can do is try and buy time, try and stay alive, and try to create angles for him so that he can get a pick, and with that player advantage, then they can engage. Until then, they just can't, because in this close area, the Justice are going to outbrawl them, they're going to outplay them. But watch what happens to Hureg. You can see here, as he tries to get on this high ground, he's just got no angle. He's got nothing to look at, nothing to really see, and in comes Corey to try and contest him. And although it doesn't last long, it doesn't matter, because all he's done is buy time for his own team, distract Hureg, and then get the hell out of there. Once again, no great angles, the wall is zoning him out, and the Justices themselves are playing in a very tight, narrow area. Look where they are. Can a Widowmaker get in here? No, she can't see any of this. She can't come through around this shield, she can't get this Moira, she can't get this Reaper, she can't get this D.Va, and Stratus, he's just out here freezing people and zoning them with walls. So once again, guys, we have all the tools to understand why the Justice are winning. Their team composition, they're playing to the map geography, using this little hideout area here to deny the Widowmaker angles. The Titans are failing to adapt to the map geography, despite throwing what is generally a good pick of the Widowmaker on the high ground. They just can't answer what the Justice are doing. And of course, the Justice are executing their win conditions perfectly, setting up in tight narrow areas to brawl, and denying the enemy team any good angles. So once again, fight plays out, Jianu gets frozen, he's forced to back up, and thanks to the turtle on point, the Justice get the flip once again. And we know how hard they are to dislodge once they get a point. Thanks to the Moira healing, they're able to pop a Coalescence, and compare that again to Twilight's ult charge. Because his team is playing more split up, he isn't able to build a nano boost as fast as Guido is able to build a Coalescence, because Guido can just hold left click in that tight little area, build up his ultimate, and now use it to drive the Titans back. So again, these differences are not just arbitrary, guys, they are very, very important, particularly at this high level. Every little tiny thing is making a difference when we actually look back at it from this analytical perspective. So Hureg has now gone over and switched to the Reaper. And Jianu and Twilight have now switched. So now the Titans are trying the mirror matchup. Now they fancy beating the Justice in a one-on-one. But of course, there's already a couple things in the Justice's favor. One, the ult advantage. We can see Guido has way more ultimate than Twilight, Sansom has way more ultimate than Jianu, and Corey has a good amount of ultimate more than Hureg. So we already can see there's going to be a 3 ultimate advantage potentially for the Justice, and on top of that, the Justice are just better at executing this game plan. Although the Titans drop the Supercharger, nice wall once again, Stratus zones it out completely. And again, we can see the way the Justice are set up, nice and tight, nice and clean. Both Meis have their ultimates ready, they pop them, but thanks to Guido's ult advantage, you're going to see he's going to be the savior of the Justice. So as they're getting frozen, he's just popping his Coalescence to keep them all alive, and then he uses it to zone out members of the Titans, as the Stratus, who uses this wall to deny this angle for the Titans to walk in and actually try and do any damage to the Justice themselves. Janus has popped a Supercharge as well, and he uses his Fortify to make sure he can walk through this freeze. Stratus' Ice Block is going to save him from the freeze, so the only person who's actually getting frozen at the moment is Sansom. So once again, the Justice playing to their composition perfectly, and by the time Corey actually gets frozen, there's so much backup. Janus is there with the shield, Guido's there with the Coalescence, and Corey's able to stay alive, and only one person goes down, that's Sansom, who was frozen, and he was in Baby D.Va form anyways. Back to the same strategy. Sit here in this corner, drop a shield in a second, hide behind the shield, make yourself hard to break down. Now once again, the ult advantage I was talking about. Remember I said that there was a couple advantages that the Justice had from playing this composition from the start. Well, look at it now. Corey has his Death Blossom, Sansum has just launched his self-destruct. Look at Janu, look at Hureg. They're halfway there. Had they been playing this comp from the start, maybe they have their ultimates too. But of course, they don't. Sansum self-destruct goes and claims Twilight, and the sound barrier is too late from Slime. Arc sound barrier is much nicer, it's later so it keeps his team protected better. And now, the members of the Justice are just able to clean up on the members of the Titan, getting kill after kill after kill. Guido's got another Coalescence already, and he mops everybody up. No one left for the Titans to touch, and that's an easy 2-0 for the Washington Justice. So that's all I got for today. Hope you found this video helpful, and I hope it served its purpose. Like I said, at some point, I do want to put out a video that helps people understand how to review their own gameplay, but of course to do that, you have to be equipped enough to look back at any game of Overwatch and understand what's going on. Once more, I should emphasize, don't worry if this all doesn't click with you instantly, it's not supposed to. You're not just going to be able to watch a video once and suddenly understand exactly how to process everything that goes on in the chaos of an Overwatch game, so feel free to revisit the checklist, revisit the video, and also just play around for yourself, practice this skill on your own time. Maybe try watching a game on the Overwatch League viewer without the commentary and try to figure out for yourself what you think is going on, why you think it's going on, and why you think each team is making the decisions they do, whether that's based on map geography or team composition or whatever it is. Because once you start to be able to view games and understand them much more easily, I promise you'll really see your understanding of the game start to shoot up. As always, I just want to give a big shout out to my patrons who are awesome enough to support me, and if you like what you saw and you want me to continue making content, please do consider becoming a Patreon of mine as well. The link is in the description. But otherwise, that's it on this topic. I'll be back next week with another video. See you guys soon.